On December 11, 2022, NASA's Orion spacecraft made a safe return to Earth, re-entering the atmosphere and splashing down in the Pacific Ocean, successfully concluding the uncrewed Artemis 1 mission. Not long after, a Navy team aboard the USS Portland carried out the capsule's recovery, bringing it onto the ship's well deck. The entire operation took about 2 hours, marking NASA's first attempt at recovering an Orion spacecraft after an orbital mission. Meanwhile, SpaceX has been routinely recovering its Dragon capsules from orbital missions for years. And get this, it usually takes them just 60 minutes or less, cutting NASA's time in half. But this isn't just about mission type. The key difference lies in the approach. SpaceX embraces a modern, streamlined recovery process focused on speed and cost efficiency, whereas NASA continues to rely on a more traditional method. So how does SpaceX take NASA's decades of experience and leap ahead with their own innovative spin? Let's dive into that and more in today's episode of TechMap. SpaceX may have taken a few pages out of NASA's playbook when it comes to vehicle recovery, but it's how they adapted and evolved the process that truly sets them apart. Let's start with NASA. Before their Orion spacecraft makes a splashdown, the agency deploys a Navy amphibious ship to the site. These ships feature a large open area at the waterline called a well deck, where smaller recovery boats can maneuver alongside. Depending on weather and sea conditions, astronauts can be extracted either directly from the water or from within the ship's well deck. If recovery happens inside the well deck, a specialized stand is used to safely assist the astronauts once the spacecraft is on board. Once Orion is in the ocean, a team of divers and recovery experts sets out in small boats. They secure the spacecraft and use winches and cables to haul it into the well deck. The deck is then closed and drained, creating a stable, dry space to transport the capsule and its crew back to land. It's a reliable process, tried, tested, and very NASA. Enter SpaceX. They took inspiration from NASA's methods but added their own twist. The company acquired a former offshore supply ship, originally built between 2009 and 2010 in Alabama, to support the recovery of their Crew Dragon capsule. This vessel went through several names and owners before being acquired by Geiss Offshore in 2014 and rebranded as MVGO Searcher. In 2016, SpaceX chartered Go Searcher to recover payload fairings from their Falcon 9 launches. The plan? Use parachutes and parafoils to slow the descent of the fairings, catch them at sea, and reuse them to save on production costs. The first few missions didn't go as planned. It wasn't until the fourth attempt, during the SES-10 mission, that they managed to haul back large chunks of fairing debris, although not intact fairings. Clearly, there were issues, either with steering the parafoils or with damage upon ocean impact. Afterwards, they repurposed Go Searcher for Crew Dragon recovery, modifying it with a capsule crane, a helipad, medical facilities, and cutting-edge tech to support both cargo and crewed missions. The ship played a major role in the Demo 1 mission in March 2019 and helped recover the capsule during the dramatic in-flight abort test in 2020. These missions paved the way for human spaceflight's return to U.S. soil, with Demo 2 in May 2020. From that point on, the ship, renamed Megan in honor of astronaut Megan MacArthur, became the go-to vessel for Crew Dragon and Cargo Dragon recoveries. Over its career, it safely brought back 24 astronauts, including participants in the first all-commercial and private astronaut missions. But like any seasoned veteran, Megan's time eventually came to an end. During the historic Crew 9 mission, in which 2 stranded NASA astronauts were brought home, Megan completed its final assignment on the East Coast. Fittingly, this marked the last Dragon splashdown in those waters before recovery operations shifted westward. Megan then sailed to Louisiana in mid-June 2025 for retirement. This wasn't just about nostalgia. It was a strategic move. Older ships like Megan come with higher maintenance costs. SpaceX, known for optimizing everything, is now turning to newer recovery vessels like MV Shannon. It's all part of the company's mission to lower launch costs by up to 30% through innovation, reusability, and smart logistics. SpaceX didn't just copy NASA, they took the blueprint, reimagined it, and arguably outperformed their mentors. Let's talk about Dragon's recovery process, which just takes half of NASA's time. SpaceX's approach involves lightning-fast crew extraction, backed by Air Force rescue teams and a tightly coordinated multi-step process using small boats, a recovery ship, and even a helicopter. Right after the Dragon capsule splashes down, fast boats rush to the site. Their first priority? Safety checks, looking for hazardous fuel and confirming the astronaut's condition. Once everything's clear, they secure the capsule with cables and use cranes on recovery ships like Megan to lift it on board. Unlike NASA's Orion, which is brought into a ship's well deck, Dragon stays on the open deck. While the Dragon's hoisted aboard, recovery teams also retrieve parachutes floating in the sea. Once the Dragon's safely on deck, astronauts are helped out of the capsule and immediately taken to a medical area for checks. A helicopter is then used to fly them back to land, quickly and efficiently. For cargo-only missions, the helicopter is also used to return important science payloads or gear to the Kennedy Space Center as fast as possible. NASA's Commercial Crew Program requires SpaceX to get astronauts out of Dragon within 60 minutes of splashdown. By comparison, NASA's own Orion recovery process can take up to 2 hours. How does SpaceX pull it off? By designing both the spacecraft and operations around speed and simplicity. Crew Dragon features a large side hatch that swings outward for a wide, clear exit. It uses a quick release mechanism, so recovery teams can open it almost immediately after splashdown. It's placed so astronauts can step right onto a recovery platform or into a raft, ideal for people who've just spent time in microgravity. In emergencies, astronauts can even get out on their own, thanks to the roomy interior and the way controls and seats are laid out for fast movement. On board the recovery ships, immediate medical support is always ready. Ships like Megan are outfitted with medical treatment units and trained personnel, dedicated spaces for quick health checks and emergency care, helipads for fast medevac if needed. The ship's crane lifts the capsule right onto the deck so doctors can assess the crew on the spot, no delays. And with operations near the coast, astronauts are never far from full-scale hospital care. Now, contrast that with NASA's Orion. It's a bigger, heavier capsule, so pulling it from the ocean is more of a challenge. Recovery requires massive ships, cranes, and a full Navy team. It also usually lands farther offshore in open waters, meaning it takes longer for recovery crews to reach it, secure it, and help astronauts out. Orion's interior layout and size can make egress harder, especially after long missions in deep space. Astronauts might be more affected by microgravity and need extra help. As mentioned, Orion was brought to the deck, so immediate medical assistance was almost impossible. We have to wait until the deck is closed and drained. Unlike SpaceX's vessels with built-in medical facilities, Orion's recovery depends on Navy assets and helicopters, which may take longer to provide full medical attention. In short, SpaceX's commercial model lets them optimize for speed and cost. Their ships, like Megan, are custom-built for quick recovery and crew support. NASA, on the other hand, sticks to more traditional methods, effective but slower and more resource-heavy. So, which would you choose? The commercial path focused on speed and reusability? Or the traditional aerospace route that prioritizes thoroughness? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Anyway, if you love this deep dive, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell. We're aiming for 150,000 subscribers, and we need you to get there. Check out our other videos on Starship, Artemis, and more. And let's keep exploring the cosmos together. Orbital missions usually involve highly complex recovery procedures, mainly due to the unpredictable landing scenarios, the critical need to ensure astronaut safety at all times, and the tough challenges of re-entering Earth's atmosphere from space. On the other hand, suborbital missions, like Blue Origin's New Shepard, are much simpler to recover. This is largely because the flights are shorter and don't go as high. New Shepard only flies for about 10 to 12 minutes, just crossing the Kármán line around 100 kilometers above Earth, without actually going into orbit. That means it comes back down in a very controlled and predictable way, usually landing near its launch site in West Texas. What also helps is that the rocket booster lands itself vertically on a pad, while the crew capsule floats back down under parachutes. That makes it easy to plan and control exactly where everything lands. Since the capsule comes down on solid ground or close to shore, a small team nearby can quickly reach it, help the passengers, and secure the capsule. There's no need for big ships or aircraft to fish it out of the ocean. The capsule is built so passengers can exit quickly once it's on the ground. Plus, they only experience a few minutes of weightlessness, so they're not dealing with the effects of long-term space travel, making the recovery even smoother. New Shepard is designed to be reused with minimal maintenance. That means once it lands, it's easy to turn it around for the next launch without a huge recovery operation. And New Shepard's 13th crewed mission is one of those missions. On June 29th, Blue Origin sent its 70th person into space, lifting off at 9:39 a.m. CDT from its launch Site 1 in West Texas. On board were husband and wife Ali and Carl Quenner, Leland Larson, Freddie Risigno Jr., Owolabi Salas, and James Sitkin. Carl Quenner became Blue Origin's astronaut number 70, which, based on prior precedent, was determined by the seat on board the New Shepard capsule that he assigned for the flight. He also became the 750th person in history to reach space, as recorded by the Association of Space Explorers Registry of Space Travelers. The 10-minute NS-33 mission, numbered such as this, was Blue Origin's 33rd New Shepard flight overall, went to plan, with both the propulsion module, Tail 5, making a safe vertical landing, and the crew capsule, named RSS Kármán Line, returning the passengers to a parachute-slowed, air thruster cushioned touchdown, not far from where they launched. For about 3 minutes as the gumdrop-shaped capsule reached its apogee, or highest point away from Earth, the Quenners, Larson, Risigno, Salas, and Sitkin experienced weightlessness and saw the curvature of the planet set against the stark blackness of space. The flight reached a 345,044 feet, 105.2 kilometers above the ground, surpassing the Kármán line, the internationally accepted boundary between Earth and space, at 62 miles high, 100 kilometers. It's June 2025, and the Space Coast is on fire, figuratively and literally. This week we've seen not one, but 2 massive launch days, all before Thursday, June 26th. It showcases the sheer power and diversity of American spaceflight. The first headline grabber came with Amazon's Project Kuiper, launching aboard an Atlas V rocket, a daring move in its quest to rival SpaceX's proven Starlink network. Not to be outdone, SpaceX responded the very same day by launching 27 more Starlink satellites into orbit. Then, just 2 days later, SpaceX stole the spotlight again, this time with a human spaceflight milestone. Axiom 4 launched toward the International Space Station, marking the debut of SpaceX's newest Crew Dragon capsule, known as C213. This 5th and final capsule in the fleet brings several design upgrades, from better storage solutions to improved propulsion systems, all crafted for greater reliability and reusability. For SpaceX, there was no better way to welcome this capsule than by sending it on a flagship mission with a diverse international crew. Think of it as taking your brand new high-performance car on an epic road trip to show the world what it can do. Initially, SpaceX intended Dragon C213 to enter service in 2024 for the Crew 9 mission. But delays in production disrupted that timeline, bumping its roll to Crew 10 in early 2025. The mission's trajectory changed again when NASA decided to bring back Boeing's Starliner crew flight test team on a SpaceX Dragon soon. That move elevated the urgency of getting C213 ready, as it needed to fly Crew 10 to the ISS before Crew 9's astronauts, including Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams, returned aboard Dragon Freedom. However, as launch preparations unfolded, it became apparent that Dragon C213 wouldn't be ready for its February window. That led NASA and SpaceX to pivot once more, assigning Dragon Endurance, tail number C2010, to Crew 10 and shifting C213 to support the Axiom 4 mission. And so, in the early hours of June 25th, the historic moment arrived. Axiom 4 lifted off from Launch Complex 39A at NASA's Kennedy Space Center, with C213, now in active service, riding atop a Falcon 9 rocket at 2:31 a.m. EDT. At 6:31 a.m. ET on June 26th, the crew docked to the station. As tradition dictates, the honor of naming a spacecraft's first mission fell to its crew. Once in orbit, they unveiled the capsule's new name, Grace. The name is a heartfelt tribute to Dr. Ryland Grace, the central figure in Andy Weir's novel, Project Hail Mary. Dr. Grace is a brilliant, composed, and curious scientist who rises to meet extreme challenges in space. Those same attributes perfectly align with the goals and spirit of this ambitious mission, and the international team carrying it out. It's safe to say Axiom 4 goes beyond politics or profit. For the first time ever, private astronauts from India, Hungary, and Poland are heading to the International Space Station. But this journey isn't just about reaching orbit. It's a giant leap forward for nations that haven't had a citizen in space in over 40 years. This mission is opening doors, inspiring new generations, and quietly helping these countries reignite their own space ambitions. Hungarian astronaut Tibor Kapu, part of the Axiom 4 crew, put it best. Their mission is about earning a seat at the table with the giants of space exploration. It's about becoming contributors to global science, industry, and innovation, not just observers. And this model is catching on. We've already seen it in action. Saudi Arabia relaunched its human spaceflight efforts with Axiom 2 after nearly 4 decades, sending 2 astronauts to the ISS. Israel used Axiom 1 to send Eitan Stibi, only its second astronaut ever into orbit, almost 20 years after its last human space mission. Turkey made history on Axiom 3, sending its first astronaut to space and declaring itself a new player in the space arena. The UAE took its program to the next level by moving from a brief Soyuz mission to a full-length ISS stay with NASA's Crew 6 aboard SpaceX's Crew Dragon Endeavour. All these stories share one thing in common: SpaceX's Crew Dragon made them possible. From 2020 to 2025, Dragon didn't just change how the US gets to space, it changed who can get to space. It lowered the cost, increased access, and made orbital missions more realistic for smaller nations with big dreams. In short, Axiom 4 is more than a flight. It's a symbol of a new era, one where space is becoming more international, more collaborative, and more within reach than ever before. Back to Axiom 4, the name Grace isn't just for flair. It stands for elegance, resilience, and a kind of quiet strength, the exact spirit this mission embodies. Inspired by Dr. Ryland Grace, the unshakable hero of Andy Weir's Project Hail Mary, the name is a perfect fit for a spacecraft leading one of the most scientifically intense missions in private spaceflight history. And intense might be an understatement. The Axiom 4 crew has just 14 days in orbit, and in that time, they're set to complete 60 scientific experiments. 60. That's over 4 major experiments every single day. For comparison, Axiom 1 did 25 experiments in 15 days. Axiom 3 pushed it further with 54 in 18 days. Axiom 2. Numbers aren't clear, but it was lighter. Axiom 4 it's on another level. These experiments span everything from biology, understanding how the human body behaves in microgravity, to advanced materials science and Earth observation. Think of it as a floating laboratory racing the clock, with the crew juggling multiple projects that each require setup, execution, and documentation in the unforgiving environment of space. Anyway, if you loved this deep dive, smash that like button, hit subscribe and ring the bell. We're aiming for 150,000 subscribers, and we need you to get there. Check out our other videos on Starship, Artemis, and more, and let's keep exploring the cosmos together. Now let's rewind to before launch, because the road to liftoff wasn't smooth. Originally scheduled for June 11th, Axiom 4 hit a string of delays that tested everyone's patience. First came high-altitude winds, powerful enough to force a scrub. Then a leak in the Falcon 9 launch vehicle halted things again. But the longest and most complex delay came not from the rocket, but from space itself. Specifically from the ISS. One of the station's oldest modules, Zvezda, has been leaking air for over 5 years. It's been stable, until recently. In the days leading up to the launch, NASA noticed unusual pressure readings, suggesting the leak's behavior might be changing. That prompted a launch delay as they monitored the situation. It wasn't until June 23rd that NASA gave the green light, confirming a new launch date, but without a full resolution or update on the Zvezda issue. So Axiom 4 launched into orbit with that lingering variable in the background, proving once again that space travel is never simple, and that every mission brings new challenges. But now, Grace is flying. And with it, the hopes of dozens of researchers, the momentum of international collaboration, and the weight of an ambitious science schedule, unlike anything we've seen in private space so far. This isn't just a mission, it's a masterclass in pushing boundaries, with poise, precision, and yes, a whole lot of grace. Speaking of the success of Axiom 4, I can't help but mention the contribution of many nations and organizations in the space industry, including both private and public. First of all is Axiom Space, a private company headquartered in Houston. Axiom Space organized and conducted the Axiom 4 mission. Peggy Whitson, the mission commander, also serves as the head of Axiom's human spaceflight division. The company is focused on building an off-Earth economy. SpaceX acts as the launch provider, deploying its Falcon 9 rocket and the latest Dragon spacecraft to transport the Axiom 4 crew to the International Space Station. As said, the Dragon capsule was named Grace by the Axiom 4 astronauts. The firm also handles crew recovery, relocating recovery efforts to the U.S. West Coast. It will be SpaceX's second West Coast crew recovery, following a shift from Atlantic Ocean or Gulf recoveries due to the potential for spacecraft debris surviving atmospheric re-entry and crashing back to Earth. Third, NASA. This national space agency provides the Kennedy Space Center, KSC, as the launch site. Oversaw safety monitoring, delaying the launch due to a leak in the ISS's Zvezda module. According to Dana Weigel, ISS Program Director, the Axiom 4 mission expanded the scope of scientific research by involving multiple nations, organizations, and academic institutions. NASA astronauts Anne McClain, Nicole Ayers, and Johnny Kim, part of the ISS Expedition 73 crew, will work and live alongside the Axiom 4 astronauts. Axiom's Director of Human Spaceflight, Peggy Whitson, is also a former NASA astronaut. Next one, India. Pilot Shubhanshu Shukla became the first Indian to reach the ISS as part of Axiom 4. As a member of the Indian Air Force, he was selected for ISRO's upcoming Gaganyaan mission, India's first crewed spaceflight, slated for 2027. NASA's Whitson noted that such commercial opportunities are helping to advance national space programs like India's. For Hungary, Tibor Kapu is the first Hungarian astronaut to visit the ISS. Hungary's space program, HUNER, supported 25 out of 60 experiments conducted on Axiom 4. The initiative aims to gain a foothold in the global space community and contribute to international space research and industry. The mission is also strengthening Hungary's national space ambitions. The next country is Poland. Sławomir Uznanski-Wiśniewski became the first Polish astronaut on the ISS. Poland and the European Space Agency, ESA, jointly supported 17 scientific experiments for the mission. Uznanski-Wiśniewski is a member of ESA's 2022 astronaut reserve class. The mission helps drive Poland's national space strategy forward. Together, these contributions underscore the Axiom 4 mission as a truly global effort, bridging commercial innovation with national pride, scientific research, and shared exploration beyond Earth. June is over, but the heat shows no signs of abating. And I'm not talking about weather, of course. This heat feels symbolic of everything exploding around us, from literal blasts to the growing mental pressure many are feeling. On the geopolitical front, the global spotlight is on the escalating tensions between Israel and Iran. Meanwhile, Ukraine remains embroiled in conflict, and economic woes are hitting home with rising tariffs, taxes, and painful grocery bills. Switching gears to space news, June 18th brought a major blow to SpaceX. At their Starbase facility, the much-anticipated Starship Block 2 hardware suffered yet another setback. But this time, the explosion didn't happen in flight. It occurred on the ground at the Massey test site during its static fire test. The term rapid unscheduled disassembly was once again deployed. And the outcome? Catastrophic. The entire back half of Massey was left in ruins, and an immediate cleanup and repair effort kicked off. But beyond the broken hardware and damaged test site, there's an even deeper wound, a dent in the confidence of the space community. Some experts are calling this the program's biggest snag in years, especially with the loss of a nearly flight-ready prototype and the destruction of critical testing infrastructure. This comes after 3 straight flight test failures in 2025, Flights 7, 8, and 9, underscoring persistent problems with Block 2's upper stage. All of this could further delay NASA's already slow Artemis 3 mission. That said, not everyone is pessimistic. Some engineers and observers believe this failure actually exposed a major design flaw that had previously gone undetected. In that sense, the disaster becomes a powerful learning opportunity, exactly in line with SpaceX's test philosophy: fail fast, learn faster. For perspective, many are comparing this to the June 28, 2015 failure of the Dragon CRS-7 launch, which coincidentally happened on Elon Musk's birthday. Yeah, definitely not the kind of birthday gift anyone would want. Exactly 139 seconds after liftoff, SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket suddenly broke apart mid-air, a dramatic and catastrophic failure in its second stage. The cause? A stainless steel strut meant to hold a high-pressure helium bottle inside the second stage's liquid oxygen tank gave way. It failed under a 2,000-pound load, even though it was rated for 10,000 pounds. NASA's investigation later revealed SpaceX had used industrial-grade material for the strut instead of aerospace-grade, and they didn't include a proper safety margin. A rookie mistake that proved costly. This mishap rattled SpaceX's biggest customer, NASA, and even the broader space community. Think about it. You're the new kid on the block, finally gaining traction in a high-stakes industry, and then boom, everything you've built teeters on collapse. That's exactly what SpaceX faced in 2015. The June 28th explosion wasn't just a hardware failure. It was the 7th operational mission under SpaceX's NASA contract, and it abruptly ended what had been a spotless Falcon 9 launch record. This was the first catastrophic failure in 19 launches. The ripple effects were huge and immediate. Imagine a student who just bombed a major exam. Suddenly, all eyes are on them. NASA, the Air Force, and commercial clients were watching SpaceX closely. For these stakeholders, How SpaceX responded was more important than the failure itself. Could the company own up to the mistake, figure it out fast, and prevent it from happening again? If so, trust and contracts might survive. But if not, the fallout could be brutal. Rand Simberg, a veteran of the space industry and author of Safe is Not an Option, raised concerns. He noted that SpaceX was usually pretty quick to diagnose failures. But what if the rocket's telemetry didn't capture enough data, or the wreckage was too scattered to analyze? That would be a major issue. SpaceX had $7 billion worth of future launches booked, and every grounded month meant financial losses and growing customer anxiety. Relaunching without knowing the root cause? Also risky. Another failure could tank customer trust altogether. It's like fixing a bike without knowing what's wrong. You either ride and risk another crash, or wait and miss the race. The timing couldn't have been worse. The Falcon Heavy's highly anticipated debut was just months away, and NASA's cargo schedule for the ISS hung in the balance. Questions started swirling. Should NASA still trust Falcon 9 to deliver supplies to the ISS? Skeptics pointed to SpaceX's experimental hardware, like the landing legs for testing reusability, as a potential risk. At that point, SpaceX hadn't successfully landed a Falcon 9 booster. They'd tried several times with only partial or failed landings. During the CRS-7 mission, the one that exploded, SpaceX was actively testing this reusable tech. Critics feared that adding unproven features was compromising the rocket's reliability. Some argued that NASA should stick with non-experimental vehicles for critical ISS missions. Marco A. Caceres, a senior analyst at the Teal Group, echoed that sentiment. If I were NASA, I would not be wanting to use a rocket that, at least on the way back, is going to be used for experimental purposes. I'd want a standard vehicle that gets the supplies up there to the ISS with the least amount of risk or uncertainty as possible. SpaceX, however, pushed back. Executives like Gwynne Shotwell and Elon Musk said the explosion likely came from a second-stage issue, not from the reusable first-stage technology. They argued the experimental features weren't to blame, but their reassurances felt like a drop in the ocean amid growing concerns for the commercial space sector. Let's not forget, this all happened less than a year after NASA's Commercial Crew Transportation Capability Program awarded the bulk of its contracts to more traditional aerospace giants like Boeing. To the old guard, SpaceX already seemed like a gamble. The CRS-7 disaster just fueled that skepticism. Anyway, if you love this deep dive, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell. We're aiming for 150,000 subscribers, and we need you to get there. Check out our other videos on Starship, Artemis, and more, and let's keep exploring the cosmos together. It's fair to say 2015 wasn't SpaceX's best year. But just like in 2008, when the company was on the brink of bankruptcy after 3 failed Falcon 1 launches, SpaceX has a history of pulling off last-minute comebacks, as long as it doesn't throw in the towel. On the evening of December 21, 2015, SpaceX made history. The company successfully landed the first stage of its Falcon 9 rocket back on Earth after delivering 11 Orbcomm satellites into orbit. This marked the first ever soft landing of an orbital-class rocket booster, a groundbreaking achievement. Following the landing, Elon Musk shared his excitement in a press call. "I do think it's a revolutionary moment. No one has ever brought an orbital-class booster back intact. This is a fundamental step change compared to any other rocket that's ever flown." So, how did SpaceX turn the situation around? In the 6 months between the June failure and the December triumph, SpaceX worked closely with NASA to complete a thorough failure analysis. Simultaneously, they began a major redesign of the Falcon 9, which they referred to as a block upgrade. This overhaul included more robust and safer components, making the rocket more reliable for future missions and capable of returning to Earth after liftoff. Next came major upgrades to their ground infrastructure, specifically to support super-chilled liquid oxygen. The Falcon 9 uses liquid oxygen as a propellant, and SpaceX discovered that chilling it even further could boost rocket performance. But this required revamping tanks, pipes, and pumps on the ground, much like renovating a kitchen to handle gourmet recipes. These upgrades improved payload capacity and overall launch efficiency. But here is one of the toughest challenges: securing permission to land at Cape Canaveral. Landing a rocket back at the launch site is like trying to park a race car on your front porch. It's no easy feat. After the June failure, SpaceX had to convince regulatory authorities that this landing would be safe. It took a lot of negotiation, testing, and safety assurances before they got the go-ahead. Winning that approval was a big milestone. And then the moment arrived. On December 21, 2015, the Falcon 9's first stage flew back from space and touched down upright at Cape Canaveral. It was like watching a superhero land perfectly after a giant leap. This wasn't just a cool stunt. It proved reusable rockets were possible, potentially saving millions of dollars and transforming the future of spaceflight. All of this happened in just half a year following a major failure. SpaceX improved the rocket's power with superchilled fuel, enhanced safety with design upgrades, and broke new ground by landing a rocket back on Earth. If you're a fan of science and engineering, this is a textbook example of turning failure into innovation. Since then, a new page of the space program has been opened. Right after the first landing, SpaceX didn't stop. They kept practicing. In 2016, they tried landing the Falcon 9's first stage more often, both on land at Cape Canaveral and on drone ships out in the ocean. By the end of 2016, they had nailed several landings, getting better at bringing the rocket back safely every time. The real game changer came in 2017, when SpaceX took a rocket that had already flown and landed, refurbished it a bit, and launched it again. On March 30, 2017, they sent a reused Falcon 9 into space with a satellite and landed it again. After mastering reuse, SpaceX worked on launching rockets faster. By 2018, they started reusing boosters just a few weeks or months after their first flight. In 2019, they even launched the same booster 3 times in 1 year. As time went on, SpaceX started landing rockets at new places, like their own launch site in Texas called Starbase. They also upgraded the Falcon 9 with even better versions, like the Block 5, which is super reliable and has recently achieved a record-setting 27th reuse landing with booster 1067. Since it's 2025, SpaceX has likely refined this process even more. They're probably launching Falcon 9 rockets weekly, reusing boosters multiple times, and using the savings to fund Starship missions. Reusability has become normal, and they're pushing to make space travel cheaper and more common. Maybe even getting ready for humans to live on Mars one day, like Elon Musk dreams. What if China's Tiangong space station becomes the go-to hub for crewed missions in orbit once the ISS retires? That's a future the US would definitely prefer to avoid. In the past century, China kept a low profile, developing its space ambitions quietly. But now it's stepping into the spotlight, going toe-to-toe with the United States. Since becoming operational in 2022, Tiangong has been steadily expanding. The plan? To grow from 3 to 6 modules, each packed with advanced tech. One of the most exciting additions will be the Zhentian Space Telescope, which is expected to offer a wider field of view than even Hubble. But Tiangong isn't just a science lab. It's shaping up to be a full-service platform for long-term habitation, in-orbit manufacturing, and commercial activity. With global collaboration and usage in mind, China's vision is clear: to become the dominant player in low Earth orbit. Naturally, the US doesn't want to be left behind or lose its direct access to a major orbital station. That's why NASA is accelerating the development of private space stations under the Commercial Low Earth Orbit Development Program. The goal? Seamlessly transition from the ISS to next-gen platforms, without skipping a beat. One of the most promising contenders is Axiom Space. They're working on the Axiom Station, with the first module planned to launch no earlier than 2027. Axiom aims to lead the charge in LEO's new economy. Let's break down what this station will include: payload, power, and thermal module, PPTM. This critical module provides the station's core capabilities: power, thermal control, and space for scientific payloads. It's being built by Thales Alenia Space, the Italian company behind several ISS modules, including Harmony, Tranquility Node 3, and Columbus, Habitat 1 and Habitat 2. These will serve as the living quarters for astronauts and private visitors alike. Airlock module. Just like the ISS, Axiom Station will be equipped for spacewalks and external operations. Research and manufacturing facilities. The station will carry forward the ISS legacy, enabling cutting-edge science and zero-gravity manufacturing. This battle for orbital dominance is heating up. On one side, China's expanding Tiangong. On the other hand, a new generation of private American space stations is ready to take the baton from the ISS. The race is on. The assembly of the Axiom Station will kick off with the launch of the PPTM, currently slated for no earlier than 2027. This module will initially dock with the ISS and hang out there while waiting for the first Habitat module, HAB-1, to launch. Currently, there is some uncertainty about how long PPTM will remain attached to the ISS. Axiom Space is considering its options based on NASA's requirements. Ideally, they want it to stay docked as long as possible. Why? Because this window is crucial. It allows Axiom to test, rehearse, and gain practical experience operating in space. It's all about learning, reducing risk, and leveraging the ISS's existing systems before moving to a fully independent platform. During this period, Axiom plans to move equipment and payloads from the ISS into the PPTM, which becomes especially crucial if this transfer happens close to the ISS's end of life. The longer it stays, the more value Axiom can extract from the ISS's infrastructure. And even without a Habitat module attached yet, Axiom doesn't plan to sit still. They're eyeing this overlap period to continue flying private astronaut missions to the ISS, though that won't be easy. NASA limits the number of these flights, so competition will be fierce. Still, it's a chance Axiom can't afford to miss. Once HAB-1 is launched and in position, PPTM will detach from the ISS and dock directly with it, forming the core of the new free-flying Axiom Station. That moment could come as early as 2028, 2 years before the planned retirement of the ISS. The new platform, even with just 2 modules, will be capable of supporting 4 crew members. Both modules are also built with the capability to operate independently in orbit if necessary, adding flexibility and resilience. After the station is up and running as a standalone entity, Axiom has big expansion plans. They'll attach an airlock module for spacewalks and external operations, a second Habitat module to increase living space, and a research module to ramp up science and commercial activity. Each of these modules will have its own power and thermal systems, and the first Habitat will come equipped with a robotic arm to help reconfigure and grow the station as needed. This is more than just building a new space station. It's the foundation for a future low Earth orbit economy, led by private industry. But let's be real. Building a commercial space station isn't exactly plug and play. There are serious challenges ahead, like safely transferring huge, expensive modules into orbit, and doing it all without breaking the bank. Add to that the complexity of space logistics, and you've got a puzzle that only the best in the business can solve. That's where SpaceX comes in. Right now, SpaceX's Crew Dragon is Axiom Space's go-to vehicle, and for good reason. The two companies have already teamed up on multiple private astronaut missions to the ISS. These flights, launched on SpaceX's reliable Falcon 9 rockets, aren't just trips for tourists. They're stress tests. Each mission refines operational procedures, trains crews, and gathers microgravity data, all of which directly feed into the development of the future Axiom station. Think of them as dress rehearsals before the big show. Axiom's CEO, Michael Suffredini, has said it plainly. SpaceX's track record in safe, consistent, and cost-effective launches is absolutely essential to bringing Axiom's vision of a commercial low-Earth orbit ecosystem to life. And this collaboration isn't stopping anytime soon. Once the Axiom station is fully operational, SpaceX is expected to keep flying astronauts, whether they're researchers, private citizens, or international partners, to and from the station. The heart of this partnership? Reliability and affordability. And SpaceX has proven both. Across all 4 Axiom missions so far, Crew Dragon has done exactly what it was built to do: deliver people safely to space and bring them home. Even when there are any technical glitches with the vehicle, SpaceX is quick to detect and then quickly resolve them, as seen in the latest Axiom 4, when the Falcon 9's first stage leaked liquid oxygen in the engine bay. During the Axiom 4 mission, SpaceX even debuted its 5th Crew Dragon spacecraft, and it performed like a seasoned veteran. Beyond that, SpaceX has also been pushing boundaries with bold missions like Polaris Dawn, which reached the highest Earth orbit since the Apollo era, and the Fram-2 mission, a free flyer that shattered a record for orbital inclination that had stood since the Soviet Vostok 6 mission in 1963. These achievements aren't lucky breaks. They're the result of more than a decade of close collaboration with NASA. Since 2012, SpaceX has been launching cargo to the ISS, and later developed Crew Dragon under NASA's Commercial Crew Program. 5 years have passed, and Crew Dragon has completed 10 operational missions to transport astronauts to the ISS under NASA's Commercial Crew Program. That government backing, money, mentorship, and access helped SpaceX sharpen its edge and break through into bolder, more independent missions. Simply put, without NASA's early support and without SpaceX's relentless innovation, Axiom's dream of a commercial space station might still be just that, a dream. But now, it's becoming a reality, one mission at a time. SpaceX President Gwynne Shotwell has highlighted how the Dragon spacecraft is making space more accessible than ever before. With a seat costing between $55 million and $88 million, Dragon is significantly more affordable than Boeing's Starliner with $90 million per seat, or Russia's Soyuz, up to $86 million per seat. This lower cost is a game changer for private companies looking to send people to space. Take the Inspiration 4 mission, for example, a fully commercial flight estimated at around $200 million for 4 seats, or roughly $50 million each. That price also covered extras like ocean recovery and spacesuits. For missions run by Axiom Space, seats go for about $55 million, plus an additional $35,000 per day, charged by NASA for room and board aboard the ISS. Some social media posts suggest these prices can climb as high as $70 to $100 million per seat for certain missions, though those numbers likely depend on specific, unique conditions. Because of this mix of affordability and proven reliability, it's very likely that Axiom will continue working with SpaceX to launch parts of its future space station into low Earth orbit. While no formal contracts have been announced for launching Axiom station modules, SpaceX's track record with Axiom missions, Axiom 1 through Axiom 4, makes it a strong candidate. Launching major components like the power, propulsion, and thermal module demands exact orbital placement. Delays could threaten Axiom's goal of having its station operational by 2028. SpaceX's consistent performance could be critical in helping Axiom stay ahead of its competition. By acting as a reliable space taxi for Axiom's missions, SpaceX allows Axiom to focus on designing and building its space station, while taking full advantage of SpaceX's launch capabilities. This setup fits perfectly with NASA's Commercial Crew Program, which supports private companies to lower costs and build a sustainable low Earth orbit economy. SpaceX's value goes far beyond launches. Their Crew Dragon spacecraft performs autonomous dockings with the ISS, vital for linking up with future Axiom modules. On June 26, 2025, the Axiom 4 Crew Dragon, nicknamed Grace, successfully docked with the ISS's Harmony module, proving the kind of accuracy that Axiom will need moving forward. SpaceX also provides training for Axiom's crews, covering Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon systems, emergency procedures, and how to get in and out of the spacecraft, ensuring astronauts are well prepared for future missions to Axiom Station. China's aspirations in space date back to the 1950s, a time when Cold War tensions were running high. With fears mounting that the United States and the Soviet Union would turn outer space into a militarized zone filled with orbiting weapons, China began to carve out its own path. The country's space program was born in this era, heavily intertwined with military goals. Early efforts focused primarily on missile technology, which was seen as essential for national defense, including both offensive capabilities and surveillance systems. Drawing from Maslow's hierarchy of needs, once a nation secures its basic survival and safety, it begins to pursue higher ambitions, what psychologists call self-actualization. After consolidating control in 1949, the Chinese Communist Party set its sights beyond mere survival. Space became more than a military endeavor. It transformed into a symbol of national pride and technological prowess. When the Soviet Union launched Sputnik in 1957, Chairman Mao Zedong famously proclaimed, "We too will make satellites." That dream took a giant leap forward in 1970, when China launched its first satellite, Dongfang Hong-1, officially joining the elite club of spacefaring nations. Still, China faced major hurdles. Unlike the space giants of the time, the United States and the Soviet Union, China's industrial and technological base was underdeveloped. Yet visionaries like Chen Shizhen, known as the father of China's missile and space program, championed homegrown innovation. After the Sino-Soviet split in 1960 cut off Soviet support, China pushed even harder for self-reliance. The space program became a cornerstone of national modernization, helping to drive advances across science and technology. By the 1990s and early 2000s, China's cosmic ambitions were no longer just about catching up. They were about leading. The country made its intentions clear. It aimed to challenge and eventually surpass the United States in space leadership. A pivotal moment came in 1992 when President Jiang Zemin greenlit Project 921, which set in motion a bold plan for human spaceflight. One of its major goals? Build a space station by 2020. Since then, China's space program has evolved steadily, marked by milestone after milestone, each more ambitious than the last. On November 20, 1999, China launched its first unmanned experimental spacecraft, Shenzhou-1. January 10, 2001. Shenzhou-2 launched successfully with scientific experiments and returned safely. March 25, 2002. Shenzhou-3. Unmanned spacecraft launched. After 108 orbits, returned safely. December 30, 2002. Shenzhou-4 unmanned spacecraft launched and successfully returned. October 15, 2003. China becomes the third nation to send a human into space. Yang Liwei orbits Earth aboard Shenzhou-5. October 12, 2005. Shenzhou-6 carries 2 astronauts on a 5-day orbital mission. September 2011. Launch of Tiangong-1, an unmanned test module for China's space station. 2020. Completion of China's 60-ton modular space station, coinciding with the planned decommissioning of the International Space Station. These achievements have laid the groundwork for China's next huge vision, what President Xi Jinping calls the eternal dream. At the heart of this dream is a bold, clear objective: landing astronauts on the Moon within the next 5 years, followed by the construction of a permanent lunar base within the next decade. This isn't just about exploration, it's about strategy and dominance. Former NASA engineer Casey Hanmer has warned that China may attempt to assert control over key regions near the Moon's polar craters. And yes, you guessed it, the target is the lunar South Pole, specifically those permanently shadowed craters. These shadowy regions are believed to hold significant deposits of water ice and other valuable resources, critical for sustaining long-term human activity on the Moon. With in situ resource utilization, future missions could use these materials to generate water, oxygen, and even rocket fuel. Naturally, NASA and private giants like SpaceX also have their eyes on these exact spots. But China doesn't appear interested in sharing. Their strategy involves deploying a powerful and controversial tool to make their dream a reality: nuclear power. China is planning to power its moon base with nuclear reactors, ensuring a continuous presence and the ability to mine resources around the clock. They're not going at it alone either. With support from Russia under the International Lunar Research Station project, China is targeting a fully operational nuclear reactor on the Moon by around 2035, just 5 years after their first planned crewed landing. Other partners like Venezuela, Pakistan, and Belarus have also signed on, joining what is shaping up to be a significant geopolitical alliance in space. Nuclear technology in space is a game-changer, capable of serving both civilian and military purposes. Given China's status as a nuclear power and its rapidly expanding space military capabilities, there's concern that they could use these technologies to deter or block other nations from accessing strategic lunar areas, treating them almost like sovereign territory. This aggressive approach is not without precedent. Just look at the South China Sea. Over the past decade, China has constructed more than 20 outposts in the Paracel Islands, and several more in the Spratly Islands, despite claims from countries like the Philippines and Vietnam. These outposts are now home to airstrips, missile systems, radar installations, and naval ports. China uses its Coast Guard and Navy to patrol the region, sometimes aggressively, ramming foreign vessels and enforcing its maritime claims. They've even secured security agreements in the Pacific Islands, allowing Chinese naval ships to dock and resupply, effectively setting up a long-term military footprint without labeling it a base. It's not hard to imagine a similar strategy unfolding on the Moon if China's plans succeed. But the Moon is just the beginning. China's long-term space vision is even more ambitious. Asteroid mining, Martian colonization, and the construction of next-generation space stations. One thing is clear: China doesn't just want to explore space, it wants to lead it. Anyway, if you loved this deep dive, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell. We're aiming for 150,000 subscribers, and we need you to get there. Check out our other videos on Starship, Artemis, and more, and let's keep exploring the cosmos together. In response to growing concerns about strategic threats from the East, the Trump administration has proposed a bold and controversial move to overhaul America's iconic space agency, NASA. But in the past decade, NASA has come under heavy criticism for inefficiencies and bloated spending. Billions in taxpayer dollars have been funneled into projects like the SLS, which many have labeled as overly expensive and slow-moving. Their answer? A budget proposal that sent shockwaves through NASA and the aerospace community alike. A nearly 25% funding cut in fiscal year 2026, which begins October 1st. Central to the cuts is the cancellation of the SLS rocket and the Orion spacecraft, both of which are key components of the Artemis program intended to return astronauts to the Moon. NASA is now being reshaped into a leaner agency. Around 1,500 employees, roughly 8% of its workforce, have already signed up for the government's Deferred Resignation Program. America's space legacy is undergoing a seismic shift, one that could redefine not just NASA's future, but the entire direction of U.S. space policy. At first glance, the strategy appears efficient as it directly addresses two major problems: cost overruns and bureaucratic inefficiencies. However, it's not without controversy. particularly from one of America's closest allies, Europe. The proposed budget cuts could significantly impact Europe's space sector, making it more difficult for European companies to continue producing space technology. ESA is already preparing contingency plans and even contemplating whether it can take over NASA's responsibilities. But doing so would demand enormous financial and political effort. Meanwhile, back in the U.S., NASA's own staff are feeling a wave of uncertainty and pessimism. This mood intensified after Jared Isaacman's nomination for NASA administrator was abruptly withdrawn. Isaacman, a billionaire entrepreneur and private astronaut, was seen by many as a visionary reformer. His top goals included cutting red tape and accelerating the timeline for moon missions. He wanted to revive the bold, mission-driven culture that powered NASA's legendary achievements in the 1960s and keep lunar space open to democratic nations. But his nomination was derailed, reportedly as collateral damage, in the ongoing tensions between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. That withdrawal signaled the loss of a transformational opportunity for NASA, an agency long criticized as being bogged down by red tape and institutional inertia. With Isaacman out of the picture, the position of NASA administrator will likely remain vacant for 6 to 9 months, further deepening the uncertainty across the agency. This leadership vacuum has left NASA's workforce in limbo, unsure of what comes next for America's space program. Amid a challenging era for space exploration, private companies armed with cutting-edge technology and bold ambition, like SpaceX, are emerging as beacons of progress. Their colossal Starship rocket is touted to cost less than $10 million per launch, making it the most affordable option on the market today. This fully reusable system, which merges the Starship spacecraft with the Super Heavy booster, can carry up to 150 metric tons in reusable mode and 250 metric tons in expendable mode. Such capacity is crucial for hauling the large volumes of cargo, equipment, and crew needed to support long-term lunar missions and the construction of a moon base. This level of innovation sets a high bar that competitors like China, who often rely on imitation strategies, may struggle to reach, or might not reach at all. Given all this, it's no surprise that NASA has chosen SpaceX to return humans to the moon for the first time in over half a century as part of the Artemis program. Starting with Artemis 3, Starship will transport astronauts to the lunar South Pole, where they'll conduct moonwalks and begin scouting locations for a future lunar outpost.